Welcome back to another monthly recap. This is everything I read and watched in the month of March. This month was a great month. I read 10 books and I watched 14 movies. The first book I read was Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. This is the first book in that series and I had such a great time. I gave it 5 stars. I think it's a fantastic young adult fantasy novel and I'm really excited to continue the series. I feel like the way that it's written doesn't feel as young adult or like juvenile as some other young adult fantasy, and it was still really enjoyable as an adult to read it. I loved the Arthurian, like, legend part of it, and I really am excited to see where the rest of the series goes. I read a nonfiction book called The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein. This is a nonfiction book about redlining and segregation, and so I was very excited to expand my knowledge on that, but I had to give this book 3 stars. I think that this book is a great sort of history book or good reference for a lot of other research and resources. I think it compiles this like list of information about redlining and segregation really well, but I don't think it says anything about it other than this was bad, obviously. I do think it's still worth reading if you don't know anything about redlining though. I also read The Color of Law on audiobook, which I think was a lot more enjoyable than the physical copy just because the physical copy felt a lot like a textbook. And then I started reading the Shadowhunters books again this month. I loved these books so much as a middle schooler, like my main obsession. I even dressed up as a shadow hunter for Halloween in middle school. This was one of the first series where I pre-ordered a book. So I thought it was time to do a reread, and it's sort of popular on Book Talk right now. So I started with City of Bones. I love this book. I love this series, and I think it holds up. I ended up giving this book 4 stars because I remember liking some of the later books a little better, so I didn't want to get ahead of myself. But I just love all of the characters, the world building in this. It's one of the best examples of urban fantasy, and I'm obsessed with it. So I can't wait to continue reading this series. I ended up reading Natural Beauty by Ling Ling Wang. This has been on my physical TBR for a while, and it was a great short book. I read Immaculate Conception last year and I loved it, so I was excited to read her other work. I gave this one 4.5 stars. I thought it was so good, and I feel like this is the standard for beauty horror. Beauty horror is like a really popular genre right now, especially with The Substance coming out last year, but I think that this is like the best version of it. I've seen a lot of people compare this to Rouge, and I do think that there are similar themes in there, but I liked this one much, much better. And I can't wait to see what Ling Ling Wang writes next because I just love her writing style and I think she does horror so well, especially like weird girl friendships and weird girl lit. And then I read Chain Gang All Stars by Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah. I read this as a buddy read with my friend Naya. This is a 5-star read. This is probably going to be my favorite book of this year. I love everything about this, the writing style. I love that each chapter is a different point of view because it really lends different perspectives to the story of the 2 main characters, Loretta Thurwar and Hurricane Stax. It is a dystopian novel, but it incorporates so much of our own carceral systems information and stats into this book, and I think that that was so interesting but also so informative. So if you haven't read it, please go do it. I read City of Ashes, which is the second book in the Mortal Instruments series. This is also a great book, and I gave it 4 stars again. It just is a great continuation of this series, and I have sped through these like 3 days on average for this series. So I took a break from the Shadowhunters books for a second, and I read Hood Feminism by Mikki Kendall for a book club on Fable, and I gave this book 3.5 stars. I don't think it was the best example of feminist writing that I've ever read. I think it is dated. It's from 2020, so a lot of the terminology doesn't hold up as well as it should, and I think there's a lot more to be said about feminism now. It's a good introduction to intersectional feminism if you're unfamiliar with it or you're trying to become a little bit more radical in your feminism. The structure of it was sort of lacking, and the titles of the chapters didn't really match the contents of the chapters. I also think it could have gone way more in depth and had a lot more research included. So this book was a little bit disappointing for me, but I do think it still has value. And then I read Wings of Starlight by Alison Saft. It's like Queen Clarion's story, so it's sort of a prequel to Tinkerbell. And I thought it was actually so well written. I was so surprised. I gave it 4 stars. I really enjoyed this story. I was a little bit disappointed by the ending just because I had misremembered the world of Tinkerbell, I guess. So that was my own fault, but I thought that this was such a fun story, and I read it on audiobook. I thought it was a great audiobook. So if you want something really fun and lighthearted and nostalgic, I highly recommend this book. I hopped back into the Shadowhunters universe. I read City of Glass. This one is 4.5. I think that this one is the best one so far. It might be the best one in the series. All of the twists in this are insane, and the plot is just so, so good. I think also her writing has improved a lot from the first 2, and the characters just have a lot more depth to them. So this is definitely my favorite one so far. So the last book I read in March was The Undocumented Americans by Carla Cornejo Villavicencio. I gave this book 5 stars. I loved this book. I think the writing style was so unique. Her perspective is so unique. She has sort of a dark sense of humor, I think, and I really appreciated how she incorporated that into this book. This book only has a few chapters in it, and each one is a different city in America. In each city, she tells the story of a bunch of different undocumented immigrants and what they do in this country to survive, and just tells the story of how their like daily life is. And I love how each person that she talks about and talks to in her life is a sort of character, even though we don't get to spend that much time with each person. We still get to know them really well. If you're looking for a new nonfiction book, this is a must read. I watched 14 movies in March. This is a lot of movies for me, but it was Oscars month, which is my favorite time of year. I always watch all of the Best Picture nominees, and I try to watch as many other nominated movies as I can. So a lot of these movies are going to be Oscar nominees. No Country for Old Men. I gave this 4 stars. I had never seen this, and I have been on a Coen Brothers kick, so I really wanted to include this one. I do think it was a great movie. I just didn't like it as much as I thought I was going to. Train Dreams. This was nominated for a bunch of Oscars, including Best Picture. I gave this 4.5 stars. I loved this movie. I was such a wreck during and after. It was so beautiful. I just adored this film. If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. I gave 3.5 stars. Rose Byrne is incredible, but I didn't think it was as good of a film as I was hoping. I rewatched Sinners. I gave this 5 stars. This was my favorite movie I watched all last year. It's an incredible film. And on rewatch, I noticed so many new things, and also so much about the filmmaking, the acting, the cinematography, the writing. I love Sinners. Sentimental Value, I gave this 3.5 stars. I thought all the acting performances were really good. And I liked a lot of the storyline, except I think the Elle Fanning storyline was not necessary and sort of took away from the rest of the film. F1, because it was nominated for Best Picture. I actually liked this movie a lot more than I thought I was going to, which I think is the general consensus. I don't know why it was nominated for Best Picture, but I still had a good time watching it, and I gave it 3 stars. Hamnet, and I hated this movie. I don't like Chloe Zhao. I think she is a hack, and I gave this movie 2 stars, but I do think Jessie Buckley deserved that Oscar. She was incredible. It was just an accident. I gave this 4 stars. I thought that this was a good movie, and I'm not really sure why it didn't get nominated for Best Picture. It got the Palme d'Or, which is unusual that that doesn't get nominated for Best Picture. I thought it was so good. I was thrown off by the fact that there was no soundtrack, so that was really where I had to knock it down a star, because I think the ambiance and the vibes of it were just sort of off for me. On the day of the Oscars, just while I was getting ready for my Oscars party, I rewatched Begonia. This is a 5-star film. It's one of my favorite movies from last year, and Yorgos Lanthimos is probably my favorite director. I love this film. I think it's phenomenal. Jesse Plemons was snubbed, all that. After the Oscars were over, I got to see some other movies in the theater, so I went to see Project Hail Mary. I loved this movie. I gave it 5 stars. Thought it was so fun, and I don't even like space movies like that. And I checked out Legend from 1985 by Ridley Scott from the library. This is a movie I saw as a child and had like a very vague memory of, and so I wanted to see what it was about. I gave this 2 stars. It's really not very good, and I had a fun time though because it's Tom Cruise and Tim Curry, so I can't really be mad. I went to see Ready or Not 2 in the theaters. I loved the first one, and I thought that this was equally as good, so I gave it 4.5 stars because that's what I rated the first one. I love Sarah Michelle Gellar. I really think Samara Weaving is great, and I really hope they don't do any more of these films because I really like just these 2 as a duo. I had never seen The Devil Wears Prada, so I watched that for the first time. I wanted to see it before I saw the second one that comes out soon. This is a great movie. Like, obviously. It's so popular. Everyone loves it. I gave it 4 stars. It's kind of everything I thought it would be, and I had a great time. And the last movie that I watched in March was Tinkerbell from 2008. I wanted to rewatch these films after reading Wings of Starlight, and my wife has never seen these Tinkerbell movies, so I wanted to introduce them to her for the first time. I have still been watching The Pit as it comes out every week. I love this show. I think it's so, so good, and I'm so sad because we just got the news that Dr. Mohan is going to be leaving, but Dr. Ellis is going to become a season regular, and she's my favorite character because I'm gay. And we watched Slow Horses. Slow Horses is about a group of sort of discarded MI5 agents, and they all work at Slough House. And each season is like a different, really complicated, like governmental global threat, and they have to solve it. It stars Gary Oldman. I think it's actually just such a good show. And then I am watching Game of Thrones for the first time. I watched the first season in like one day. I just feel like I have to watch it before the 3rd season of House of the Dragon comes out because I've only seen seasons 1 and 2 of House of the Dragon, and I'm obsessed with that show. Yeah, but that's everything I read and watched in the month of March. Bye!